Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. Alright, today we are going to be taking a look at Rackham Vale, a fantasy adventure from the art of Arthur Rackham. Now this was provided to me by the publisher, and if you stay tuned, I will tell you of a way that you can win this exact copy. I'm going to be giving it away. Not because I dislike it, but because I need to be really picky with what I keep in my small hobby room, which is completely out of room. So while I think this is a pretty awesome set of a book and some cards, it's just not something that I am going to be adding to my collection. So I am going to pass it along to one of my Dungeon Dive patrons. So I'm going to have a post there on how you can win this copy. So Rackham Vale is a fantasy setting. It is a game setting for old school rules RPG, OSR stuff. I still feel kind of like a poser saying OSR because I'm not an OSR guy, even though I really like Scarlet Heroes and like White Box and stuff. I'm still dipping my toe into that realm, so I don't want to try to come off like some kind of a knowledgeable person in the OSR world. But what that means basically is you are going to be getting a setting with some rules, and the big thing in this is an amazing bestiary that you can use in just about any kind of old school role-playing game like basic D&D. It is specifically written for old school essentials, but you could use this with White Box, with basic fantasy role-playing, or even with Scarlet Heroes, which might be a lot of fun. So I am also not going to give you the Wikipedia information for Arthur Rackham. I am not an expert on Rackham, on his art, on the man, on his influence. I was aware of him before this, just being into books. If you're into books, you are probably aware of him. He was a very influential illustrator of fairy tales and children's literature. So you can look him up on Wikipedia to get all of your information, and there is a nice little article about the man in the back of the book here. And his art, it really does make sense to base a fantasy setting on his art, and I would love to see more fantasy settings based on just the art of particular artists. I think that would make a fantastic kind of series of RPG supplements. So this is a setting. It is a small setting. About half of this book is the setting, and the other half is the bestiary. And the setting takes place here in Rackham Vale. And it goes over, the book has most of the information you are going to need for many of the major locations and people, places, and things that your players will experience. This is for a GM-led game. This is not a solo supplement, and that is kind of one of the reasons why I am going to be passing it along, just because I rarely really get to the RPG stuff I have if it's not like super just dedicated to solo RPing, even though when we take a look at these cards here, I could see how these could be incredibly useful for solo RPing. But this game, I think, is especially, or this setting is especially suited for a GM-led campaign because of some of the intricacies involved in the actual book and some of the things that it does ask you to some of the ways it asks you to run the game and to play it. So these are available through Crowbar Creative, and that is crwbr.com. The book itself is, how many pages is it? It's 150 pages, super well made, just really nice quality cover, incredibly nice quality, great quality pages. So everything is really nice, and it is a $25 supplement. You can get a PDF for $7. You can get the bestiary cards here for another $40, which yes, the cards themselves are more than the book, but we'll get to why in a minute. And then you can get a set for, I believe, $60, and that is still available. I just checked today, as of November 2nd, 2021. These are still available via the website, and this was a kick-started campaign setting. So right on the inside here, you're going to get a couple charts of some creatures. You will have your Seelies, which are like brownies, elves, fairies, gnomes. This is very much a setting of a fairy tale setting. Grimm's fairy tales, kind of a traditional European fairy tale setting, with things like I said, brownies, elves, fairies, gnomes, leprechauns, mermaids, nixies, pixies, selkies, and sprites. And then you also have your standard mythological creatures like centaurs, dryads, griffins, etc. Some unseelies, so bogarts, boggles, bugbears, changelings, goblins, and also some malevolent mythological creatures like basilisks, cyclops, dragons, harpies. So you're going to be able to use all kinds of different creatures for your games that take place in Rackham Vale here. And then you have your table of contents, an introduction, things that the game master will need to do to prepare, different ways that the PCs can arrive into the Vale. If they are coming in through a road or through mountains or through a river, there are a few different ways to discover the Vale. And depending on how the PCs do that, well, then you might have a little bit of a different kind of introduction. So one of the things that I think makes this setting particularly interesting for a GM-led campaign is the use of things called secrets. So throughout the book, there are certain sentences that you can find that are underlined, like that here. Like this says, from the clouds they fashion the most remarkable clothing, which neutralizes the effects of the no moon crones, squeezes, pokes, and tickles. To guard this secret, they wear their garments only at night and rarely in front of strangers. And so just about on probably like 80, maybe 75 to 80% of the pages, there are underlined sentences, and each one of those is a secret. And at certain points during the game, the GM will dole out secrets, or the PCs can discover secrets about the Vale. When the PCs enter the Vale, it is important for the GM to collect from each of them certain secrets, because there is the No Moon Crone, which is kind of like one of the major actors in the area. She's one of the major players in the intricacies of the environment. And there's a thing called a yapple tree, which is a tree that grows fruits that contain and give out secrets. So having secrets, knowing secret things is very important to this game. So I think that would kind of be a hard thing to implement in a solo game, because those secrets, some could be red herrings, some could lead to other things. So the GM kind of needs to control how those are used. In addition to that, it is also important for the GM to use or develop a calendar system for some of the major creatures that appear at certain times during the calendar. And so really what you're going to get is you are going to get this oversized postcard version of the map, and then you will get to your key features chapter, and which that will give you an overview of many of the major locations, such as the Golden River. It does have each section has some really great ideas for role playing. You will get a breakdown of who or what is here in the general vicinity. You will get a little section about what is interesting about this area, and most of the areas and locations will have some kind of chart to determine your encounters or certain things, random things that the players can discover. So you have places like the Golden River. You have your Golden River, you have encounters and motivations for those encounters, and just incredible art throughout. I'm telling you, this book is just absolutely gorgeous. Different ways that the Mercury can poison the PC, so different things that PCs will have to worry about. You have a Vale High Road, so the high road here follows this major arterial there, goes throughout the entire land. Different encounters that you can have on the high road. You have the main hall and the King Head's Tavern, which is this area here. So that might be an area that the PCs can go to collect some information, maybe gather some secrets. There are a couple different villages that you can visit. A lake there, the Napping Bridge, the Absinthe Town, which is, I believe that's one of the bigger towns in the area, and it is near a mining town, a mining village. So just a lot of that copper mine there. Lots of really cool and interesting things to explore and different locations for the GM to implement in his or her adventure. And then after you get through all of the major locations here, your next section we're going to come up to is this nice chart of all of these different factions, all of the major factions, and how they are related to each other, whether they are uneasy, hostility towards each other, they are doing business of some sort, whether they love each other, or general opinions about this individual or group. So a nice little legend here, and then it's really easy to track how the different factions relate to one another. You will get then a section on adventure hooks, just different ways to introduce the players to this setting. And this is really cool. I really like this a lot, especially in conjunction with the bestiary and these cards here, is certain creatures will have different hooks that you can use to introduce the PCs to the area. And because the creatures, the inhabitants of this world are so important to the setting, I really like that it provides these kinds of adventure hooks for many of the major creatures, like the Fish King, the Feral Owls, the King of the Golden River, the No Moon Crone, and then different ways if there's like the combat hook or an investigation hook, and different ways to use those creatures to introduce the players to the area. And then finally, what is really kind of like the main part of the game, of this supplement, is the bestiary, is all of its creatures and what they are like, how to role play them. The stats, you're going to get a really good variety of stats where you will have descending and ascending armor class. You will also have your Thako score and your hit dice. So as you can see, you can use any of these creatures really in a large variety of old school based role-playing games. Lamentations of the Flame Princess, Scarlet Heroes, White Box, old school essentials, basic D&D, and all of that kind of stuff. So we're going to take a closer look at the bestiary in just a minute, but there are a ton of interesting, cool creatures to use, and this is really where I think this supplement shines. And then after that, you're going to get into a few little tables for creating your own settlements and creatures, a couple different I think D20 tables here for mortal sites, who is there. So you could have a hermitage, maybe it's occupied by 3D4 adventurers or fortune seekers. What's interesting about it, everyone's name begins with the same letter, and they are only able to experience emotions that begin with that letter, the result of a silly prank. Very interesting. Then you have some Fey sites and settlements, who's there at the Fey sites. So you might have maybe an observatory with 2d6 mortal holy folk waiting to ambush the Fey folk whom they consider unholy. And what's interesting about this observatory, time passes differently here. 1 minute equals such and such. So 1 minute might equal a year. Very interesting way to establish settings. And then you also have a way to make up some creatures and give them some motivation. And in the back we have our list of backers and also a little way, an example on how to do a calendar. So this says, when the world was 100 years younger during the golden age of British book illustrations, Arthur Rackham and his paint box gave birth to some of the most transportive, iconic, and magical images this or any world has ever seen. His work brought to life characters and settings from famous fairy tales, ancient mythology, and timeless classics. In Rackham Vale, these images are given new life for use in your tabletop role-playing game. The characters, creatures, and scenes that Rackham captured become NPCs, villains, and hidden Vale settings that can be dropped into any RPG campaign that could do with a touch of magic, mystery, and old-time weirdness. There is a lot of weirdness in this, and that's one of the things that I do like about it. It has a bizarre feeling to it. It's a little out of the ordinary. There are some weird things. If you have played the game City of Chaos, you might have a general idea of what this is like. So now the big part of this is the $60 add-on, and that is the bestiary that comes in a series of oversized postcard, super high quality paper. I mean, these are thick paper, and each one has a color illustration. They are put in alphabetical order, so you can go from Brella the Spook all the way through the Weather Vanes, and each card is going to be one of your major creatures, your NPCs, and all of those are in the book, but it's a lot easier to have them on these handy cards. Additionally, you also still get the underlined information for dealing with your secrets. So this is a really cool way to do a bestiary here. You have like their powers and different things, all of their stat blocks here. So this is like the crunchy rules stuff. And then on this side, you get some ideas the GM can use of how to role play the creature, you know, who they are, what they like, what they hate, the kinds of different allies they have, and maybe some of their enemies. So you get a lot of really great information to make utilizing the creatures in interesting ways. Sometimes it is hard, especially on some of like the weirder creatures that maybe we as GMs, we as players don't encounter often, like a dumpy husk. It's hard to know what they are and how to play them in a believable way, a way that is believable for that setting. And so this gives you the information that you need to really flesh out your setting with interesting creatures and interesting ways that those creatures would interact with each other and with the various PCs. But yeah, I mean, yeah, these are expensive. $40. I would say that if you were interested in the book or the cards, maybe not both, that I would go for the cards first and then maybe just a PDF of the book. I think the cards at $40, if you are a collector, if you want something nice, I would say the cards at $40 are a better collector value to your collection of games than the book is for $25. That would be my opinion, because I could see myself just having these cards and setting them up as pieces of art, or I could see very easily just kind of like shuffling these up and drawing one at random. Let's say like all right, so we drew this at random here. What is that? That is the Questing Beast. So this guy's like super powerful. I think it's like one of the most powerful in the setting. An armor class of 1 there, just absolutely brutal there. But then you could, because of this information, because of the role-playing information, and because of its personality traits and its powers, you could very easily draw a creature out and use just this card as the basis for a solo RP session. You get some art to help set the mood. You get the crunchiness on this side, and you get the role-playing info on this side. And so you could very much just play a solo RP game using just these cards here in any setting that you are already playing in. So again, that is Rackham Vale. Thank you very much to the publishers, Crowbar Creative, Brian and Craig. Thank you for sending this to me. It is very, very nice, and I know I'm going to make one lucky patron very happy. So if you are part of the Dungeon Dive Patreon, or you are not, go head over there. There will be posts on what you need to do to win this copy of Rackham Vale. So all right guys, well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and we will talk to you later. Bye bye.